Hey, I am live and I'm trying to get things to be brighter here. Trying to change my scenery a little bit. My apartment that I use as my primary bedroom suite is not the best backdrop for these videos. So I'm just trying to change it up just a minute. So I had quite the interesting transaction, I would say, in the 20 years I've been doing real estate. You know, I've gone through some interesting situations, and recently in this particular case, so I don't do my rabbit and go off on a tangent, is this topic is about earnest money and what is it? Why do we have it? Whose is it? How is it applied, etc. So earnest money on in paragraph 5, okay, on the contract, it'll state that when you make your offer, you're going to provide X amount of earnest money. I try to get about 1%, but that amount will vary in your market. So depending on where you're buying your home, they might just like say $1,000 is enough, even if you're buying a $300,000 home. But other markets might say 1% or 1.5% earnest money. It just depends on your market. So here in Texas, we have paragraph 5. It talks about our earnest money. And what that money is it's saying I'm earnest. We have option money and earnest money. And that earnest money is saying that I'm earnest, I'm sincere, I'm not going to breach this contract and leave you without any consideration, monetary consideration if I breach it. So for example, let's start with, when do we give the earnest money? The earnest money, I try to get it the first day, but we have 3 days since the effective date of the contract. What is the effective date? The effective date is the date that you all have signed that contract. Okay, the clock starts ticking at that point. Okay, if I sign on a Saturday, right, then we have the effective date is that day, and the option starts the following day. So we have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So we want to get in by Tuesday, okay, because if it's on a weekend, we have to count the following day, business day, as a day, okay, to get it in. If we start on a Friday, want to get our money in by Monday, okay? So you don't want to mess around with that, because let's say you have a property and it's a hot market and you're out of state and you're like, I'm going to send my earnest money, or you don't get it in 3 days. Well, guess what? They might say, okay, well, see ya. They might kick you out and say you didn't provide your earnest money and we're taking another contract. You're in default of the contract, right? So if you don't provide it within those 3 days, they can kick you out. Same thing with the option money. So 3 days from the effective date of the contract. Effective date of the contract is when you all sign, not when you all verbally agreed. It's when we got that signature in ink and everybody has that contract and we are moving ahead. Okay, but everybody has to have a copy of that contract for it to be valid and effective. Okay, so let's read quickly default, paragraph, page 715. Okay, on the one-to-family contract, okay? But in paragraph 15, we see default. If buyer fails to comply with this contract, the buyer will be in default, meaning, how could that happen? Let's say, I'll give you an example. In this case I went through, we did our inspections, we negotiated money for the inspections, and we got credits off our closing costs. We got $8,000 back from the seller because there were a lot of issues we've discovered. And then, okay, well, that our option period's done. We've discovered what we need to discover. We negotiated what we needed to negotiate to go forward. And then a couple weeks before closing, we get the appraisal and the buyer says, well, the house appraised for what I bought it for, and I don't think I got a good deal and I want more money from the seller. And that's not how it works. We've already negotiated everything. You can't go, well, and the appraisal wasn't even low. The house appraised for the value that we were buying it for, but the buyer felt like it wasn't a good deal, and they felt like they should get more money from the seller, and how are they going to get more money from the seller? And they were going to back out, and well, fine, I'll back out because I'm not getting a good deal. I should get more money from them. And I said, but we've already negotiated the money that we discussed. We don't have any more surprises. You feeling like you didn't get a good deal, or you feeling like you don't want to close because you're upset or whatever, and you deciding not to close. Once you fulfilled the contract, the terms, and the seller made repairs and the seller gave money and the seller did the things that the buyer requested, and we moved out of that option period, now we're saying, okay, we've adhered to the terms of the contract, and we're moving ahead, and now you're backing out for no contractual reason. And that would be grounds for the seller keeping that earnest money of 1%, or potentially the seller could sue the buyer to continue to buy the home since the seller had fulfilled all their terms of the contract. Okay, so paragraph 15, it says if buyer fails to comply with this contract, buyer will be in default and seller may enforce specific performance. Specific performance is saying, I don't care if you don't want the home. We have a contract and you need to finish buying it and you can sell it afterward. I don't care, but this contract is valid and you need to fulfill it according to the contract. And if you don't, I'll sue you to buy it and you're going to have to buy it from me then. Anyway, I have yet to see, thank God, or been involved in a situation where there was specific performance. I've had situations where it could have been a viable option, but the people I knew didn't pursue it. Okay, so specific performance or other relief such as provided by law or both, or terminate the contract and give the earnest money as liquidated damages to the seller, therefore releasing both parties from the contract. So they could say, you know what, I want to cancel, I'll let you have my earnest money, I just need to move on. And both parties say, fine, okay, whatever, I'll take your earnest money, I'm not happy, but I'll let you cancel and I'm going to relist my home again, and you can't have this, $3,000 back or whatever it was, right? The seller keeps it as consideration as, you flaked out on me, you cost me, you took my house off the market, and it costs me. Okay, in this case, the poor seller moved out of the home, and it was very, very intense situation. Thinking, the day of closing, the buyer refused to sign because they felt like, once again, they needed more money and they wanted a better deal, and there was no contractual basis for it. As a matter of fact, the listing agent was saying how their brokerage would pay for legal pursue legal action and pay for the lawyers for their client, their seller, to seek damages against the buyer that I had. And it was kind of freaky because I'm like, man, I don't want my buyer to get sued, but I couldn't do anything. We had fulfilled everything in the contract. There was no basis for backing out. And your feelings and cold feet aren't enough to say, let me have my money back. So now if the seller flakes out on you, you can as well seek damages. You can get your earnest money back and say, fine, you said you were going to sell. I had that happen a couple times. Sellers decided they weren't going to sell, and we were like, well, you're not going to sell? So then we had to pull our earnest money out, and then we asked for them to pay us back for the inspections and the things they cost us. And they did, so that's okay. And the buyer, though, could potentially sue the seller and say, no, we had a deal. You said you'd sell me this home. I plan to move. I have my family ready, this and that. You got to sell the home. That's part of the contract. And they could sue the seller to honor the contract and close on that deal. Once again, thank God I've never seen that happen. But that's your earnest money, okay? It means I'm sincere. I'm not going to flake out on you and go, whoops, oh well, see ya, and you're not be protected in any way. At least in this case, you could have money for your mortgage or whatever it costs you to keep the property. Okay, so that's that. Have a good day.